As a preliminary matter, this is Brian Sullivan, Chair of the Affordable Housing Trust. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Meg Browers.
Here.
Rima Sherry.
Here.
Chantal Murphy.
Here.
Thank you, Chantal. Penny Dye. I believe Penny's driving, so I'm going to leave it at that and let her come in when she can. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Haley Cook.
I'm here.
Great. Anticipated speakers on the agenda. I don't see any logged in at the moment. Good afternoon. This is open meeting. The Affordable Housing Trust is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless self-participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Affordable Housing Trust is convening by video conference via the Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that folks may be able to see you and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless otherwise noted. We'll turn to the first item on the agenda, but before we do so, permit me to cover ground rules for effective, clear communication and conduct of our business to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I'll introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down a line of members, inviting each by name to provide comment, questions, and motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or your computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate meeting minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. Members wish to engage in conversation with other members, please do so through the chair taking care to identify yourself. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment to those members of the public who have joined the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names and be acknowledged by and speak through the chair. Finally, each vote in this meeting will be conducted via roll call. Brooke, is your microphone working today?
Yes, as long as my fingers work to unmute.
Excellent. How are you? Great. Okay, with that read, we'll wait till Tucker's comes on live. I'll open the agenda. There he is.
Brian.
Oh, Penny, there you are.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes. We do understand your
Okay. You're not going to. Yeah. Well, I'm not driving yet, but I'm about to. I'm waiting for my car to be done. And then I'm getting in the car. And you're not going to see me, but I will listen and vote.
Great. Sounds good.
Okay. I don't know about raising my hand. They've got me in like some weird safe driving mode.
All good. We'll keep you safe.
Thank you.
Tucker, your microphone working?
Yes, it is, I hope.
Great. And Vicky, welcome to the meeting. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. Something's wrong with my camera right now, so I can hear everything and I hope you can hear me.
Great. We can hear you. So we're glad you're here. Thank you. With
Okay.
that, I'll call the meeting to order and I'll look for a motion of the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
In a second.
Second.
Okay. Haley, you have a question or comment on the motion?
Yeah, just a quick thing that Penny did supply me with a couple of very minor typos edits. So I'll be doing that, but nothing that changes the meaning. It's like missing one letter off of a word or a misspelling. Just wanted to make that clear.
Okay, great. Rima, can we have a friendly amendment to your motion to approve the agenda with the edits as provided by
Yes.
Penny? Great.
Yes.
Thank you. And a vote by roll call. Rima Sherry,
Aye.
Mike Browers,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Hi.
Chantal Murphy,
Aye.
Penny Dye,
Aye.
and Brian Sullivan's aye. This reads approval of minutes. Haley, is there a specific meeting date that you can elaborate on?
Yes, so the minutes that are included in the packet are the minutes from, let me tell you, I can rattle them off real quick. It is So it would be January 11th, 2023, January 17th, 2023, January 26th, 2023, and our special meeting of January 30th, 2023.
Okay, sorry to complicate this, but can you identify anyone that shouldn't be voting? Can we take them all at once, or do we need to take them individually?
Let me pull that up one moment. So on the 11th, let me write this down. Do we want to vote on them individually then?
I think
okay.
we should.
Okay, so
So on the meeting
wanna-
of January 17th, I,
or the 11th
The-
first. So for the January 11th meeting, Shanta and Meg were absent, so
Okay.
anyone else can vote on that if we want to go with that one first.
Okay, so I move approval of the January 11th minutes.
Second,
and by roll call, Rima Sherry,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Penny Dye,
aye.
Brian Sullivan's an aye. We have Megan Shanta abstaining. The meeting minutes for January 17th.
Yep, for the 17th, everyone was in attendance for that one.
Great. Can I have a motion
Move approval of the minutes for January 17th.
and a second?
Second,
By roll call, Rima Sherry,
Aye.
Meg Bowers,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Tom Murphy,
Aye.
Penny Dye,
aye.
Brian Sullivan's an aye. The special meeting.
The 26th will be next, 11/20, sorry, January 26th.
Just
and
trying to-
That one, everyone can vote except for Dave, who's not here, and then Meg was not at that meeting.
Okay, so those meeting minutes will need to. Okay. Never mind. A motion
Move approval,
and a
January
second,
26th.
Second,
by roll call, Rima Sherry,
Aye.
Meg Bowers. Oh, wait, Meg is
No, Meg.
abstaining.
Mhm.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Tom Murphy,
Aye.
Penny Dye,
aye.
Brian Sullivan's an aye. Okay, we're through that part. Thank
And then
you.
there's one more, sorry,
Oh.
it's the Monday, January 30th, that was the select board one, where we had a quorum. And everyone can vote on that except for Shanta.
Move approval of January 30th minutes.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Second from Rima, by roll call, Rima Sherry,
Aye.
Meg Bowers,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Penny Dye,
Aye.
and Brian Sullivan's an aye. I got that right?
Thank you.
Now, moving to item number 4 on the agenda, we have opportunity for public comment. We have a handful of members of the public joining us. Thank you. I'll look for hands raised. Seeing none, call for one last call. Anybody have any public comment? Seeing none, I'll close public comment. And item number 5 is closing cost assistance application for 29 Beachgrass Road. Haley, can I open to you on the application and any comments? Let us know the completeness of the documents. You're currently on mute.
Sorry, here I am. So this is a Richmond property. It's an 80% AMI. And it is fully completed. They've got their housing Nantucket certification. They've gone to their first time homebuyer class. And they do have a hopefully quickly approaching closing date of either this week or next week. Have to check in and see if it was changed at all. And they have everything they need. Are there any questions?
Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Haley. Is there a motion? Go ahead, Brooke.
I move approval of closing costs up to $15,000 pending final closing costs for the Vargas family at 29 Beachgrass Road.
Second,
Second from Penny. Rima Sherry, vote by roll call. Rima Sherry,
Aye.
Meg Bowers,
Aye.
Brooke Moore, I heard an I there with maybe a sneeze. Shanta Murphy,
Aye.
Penny Dye,
Aye.
and Brian Sullivan's an I. There is an opportunity to do some edits and review and approve a edit. So I'm going to close item 5. I'll move to item 6. Item 6 is some edits to the application that Haley has worked on. Haley, can you identify those and show them to the board? You're on mute.
Sorry, multitasking here. So let me see. Yeah, so the closing cost assistant program application, it was just a bit outdated on the website. So here I can share my screen. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so here's the application as seen as on our website. So previously it had indicated for up to 150% AMI, so it was just outdated. So I've updated it to say 175. You'll see the 175 here again. And we also included language about making sure that they include the closing cost, post-closing agreement, which was recently created, essentially saying when they get their mortgage and promissory note, the closing attorney needs to fill it out to make sure it has the applicant's information, the applicant's property, and essentially if there was any mistake made by the closing attorney, they are signing to say that we agree to abide by this mortgage and this promissory note, and should there be any mistakes or anything like that, we're bound to this and we can make edits. Tucker, if you have anything to add to that. And then I also wanted to show you the chart. So again, this only had up to 150% AMI and it was outdated. So now it has the 175% AMI levels. And I'm just going to switch down because this is all the same. So we've added here in post-closing a copy of the post-closing agreement note, which is what I just described. So just minor edits are added here to include the 175 and that extra note. And if anyone had other edits that they may have noticed and want to add anything, I can do that as well. And I push it over to Tucker if he has anything else.
Thanks, Haley. And yeah, just on the the post-closing agreement, basically that allows that town council typically would review these agreements at one point, and obviously some of these aren't getting finalized in terms of their content until right before an actual closing. So this allows for in the case where and we had one example of this along the way where someone had filled in a name that did not necessarily correspond with what was in the records of the town. And so addressing that type of situation, this makes it easier to do that.
Thank you, Tucker. Any members have questions? I have one question, and I'm not sure where to direct this, but since our charter allows us to go to 200%, even though we've only seen applications up to 175, is there any reason that we wouldn't consider this up to 200% as long as the affordability deed rider was attached? And so my question is, do we move this, if we're making the edit from 175 today, all the way to 200? And maybe there's no reason we can't come back and edit this again in the future, but maybe that's a further conversation. Brooke?
Well, there's nothing that does it at that point now, and there's probably going to be stuff if we're changing our language to 240. We should probably just see what programs come out at the higher AMI levels and then adjust accordingly when there's actually a program coming, would be my thought.
Okay. I guess my I don't see any reason in having to do it today. I guess just the concept is as a group, I think we would entertain things up to 200% as our charter allows today, if there was an opportunity. We haven't seen an opportunity yet, but it would definitely open a whole new price dynamic for the conversation.
Brian,
Brooke.
if I remember, we had a conversation about extending this program to 175. That was a separate agenda item. So and then this is just the update of the documentation. So I think at some point we should have a conversation about whether we want to extend the program at higher and high levels or not. And to some extent, that's going to be about funding and whether there's money available and what programs come down the pike. So,
Right. Okay,
yeah.
Fair enough. Thank you for having clarity of memory where I didn't. So on the edits, I guess I look for, do you want us to take an action item and vote on this? Do we need to?
I'm not sure. Tucker had said to just bring it before you. Oh, I'm sorry.
We'll just vote if we're not sure, because then that's always the safest way to go.
Sure.
So look for a motion to approve the amendments as made to the document and have it be the document of record moving forward.
So moved. Oh, Tucker's.
Tucker,
Just subject to any final edits from town council.
with that friendly amendment, Rima, you still
Yes, with the friendly amendment.
in a second?
Second,
I'll second it.
Great, by roll call, Rima Sherry,
Aye.
Brooke Moore.
Aye.
Meg Bowers,
Aye.
John Tom Murphy,
Aye.
Penny Dye,
aye.
and Brian Sullivan's an aye. Item number 7, an advocacy day in Boston to support the transfer fee. Tucker, I'll kick to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just wanted to let the board know that there is a concerted effort going into an Islands Day at the State House on March 23rd to advocate for the transfer fee, our home rule petition for a housing bank and variations thereof. The Vineyard is getting organized on this. They are planning to bring roughly 200 people up to the State House. We would like to perhaps bring 100 folks from Nantucket, the more the merrier, but we would like to see if we can get a crowd of that magnitude or greater. The program for the day, it is a full day commitment. In effect, we would be taking the 740 High Line in the morning. Bus transportation would be provided for everyone, as would lunch while we were there. But we would arrive at the State House, have a few meetings we'd divide and conquer. We would have meetings with legislators when we first arrive. Then there would be call it a press event on the State House steps around noontime. Further small group meetings with legislators following that, and then catch a ride back to catch an afternoon High Line back to the island. So it is a significant commitment. We are reaching out to the civics teachers at Cyrus Pierce, who the last few years, each year, the civics classes get to choose one subject for major project in their curriculum. And over the past couple of years, 4 of the 5 sections have chosen housing. So we're hopeful that the school and teachers would be supportive of the opportunity to really have civics in action that day for the students. But we are looking for anyone and everyone who would like to advocate on behalf of this, important funding measure to participate that day. There also will be a free t-shirt for anyone who attends.
So it's Penny. I'm driving down Route 3. I can't see if you can see my hand raised or not. Anyway, I have a question and a comment, please. My question, Tucker, is, are the meetings with the legislators targeted to those that have not yet shown a propensity to support the housing bank?
The meetings are kind of going to be all of the above, but yes, we would like to get in to see as many folks who have not yet supported the housing bank, who particularly those where we think there may be willingness to consider it.
Okay, and then secondarily, having been up there a number of times myself, the most effective speakers or communicators are always the people in need or in residence in affordable housing. So I cannot tell you how important, I mean, you know this, Tucker, how important it is to have those voices represented.
I agree 100%. Brooke and I had the opportunity the other day to attend a Hispanic Leadership Institute program that Maria Partida is leading with students of Hispanic descent here. And let me just tell you, that group was extremely impressive. And yeah. we said in that meeting, we said, like, the legislators want to hear from you. They don't want to hear from Brooke or I. They want to hear from you.
Yeah. Okay, and then I guess I have a third question or comment. Do you anticipate MAR, or the Mass Association of Realtors, will be up there at the same time or not? Or do you not know?
I mean, we don't know whether they would be planning to try to be up there at the same time or not. I mean, they typically do a day at the State House themselves.
It's usually in April, and it's not usually targeted for one bill.
Yep, and this really is islands focused. We've invited folks who are participating in the Housing to Protect Cape Cod consortium that is very focused on this issue as well to join it, but it's the t-shirt design will circulate. This is very island focused.
Okay, thanks. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Penny. Thank you, Tucker. Anyone else with comments or thoughts? Tucker, go ahead, Brooke.
Do we have an outreach plan for this, Tucker, in terms of letting the community know or making it easy for them to sign up, et cetera?
We're coordinating with the Noah Lipnick is the new director of the Coalition to Create the Martha's Vineyard Housing Bank, taking over from Laura Silber, who now is working at the Martha's Vineyard Commission as their housing person. And so we have a call with Noah this week to go over the outreach plan.
Tucker, go ahead, Meg.
Wanted to mention that if you have an e-newsletter or an email blurb that you can send me, I can forward to Sunny, and then she can send it out to all nonprofit people through Community Foundation.
Awesome. Thank you, Meg. Tucker, just so I'm clear, you used we. Transportation is provided for everyone, for the board members. I just want to make sure I understand that so the public gets it.
So,
Penny, you're in and out.
I'm sorry. It's because I'm stuttering. Tucker, do you need somebody to underwrite the transportation? Maybe I can get NAREB to do it.
That would be fantastic.
Okay, so just after the meeting, let me know what you need, and I'll see what I can do. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Penny. Okay, that went smoothly. So I think, and then Haley, will you just make sure that we post a meeting for that date? So in case, hopefully we get at least a quorum of board members that are able to attend. So we're covered there. And Haley, you have your hand up, something else?
Yeah, just I'll do that. And just to address what you had mentioned about like who the transit is for, Penny, it sounds like you guys are in a chat, but the idea was that anybody who reaches out to me who wants to go will be put on a list, and we will help them with coordination and cover the cost for the bus. And I believe we're working on the ferry as well.
Great.
So that includes board
Exciting.
members. So board members, if you want to go, and you do need transportation, please just let me know. And even if you don't need it, let me know so I can add your contact info.
Thank you, Haley. Okay, seeing no other hands up, we'll close item 7. Trip to the State House to item 8, communications outreach plan for town meeting discussion. So this we've seen this on previous agendas, some opportunities to, we've discussed some opportunities to kind of get out, where we've been, where we are and where we're going kind of concepts. I'll, I guess, bring this to you, Tucker. Okay, seeing no other hands up. Vicky, can you mute your device? Concepts.
She's muted.
I guess bring this to you.
Oh,
Thank you.
she's muted now.
Oh, great.
Oh, you, Tucker.
Yeah, sure. So, we have talked in prior meetings about perhaps enlisting, a marketing / PR type person to help with the messaging, leading into town meeting, and taking really, we have a lot of data, so to speak, and we're going to go through some of that in a few moments as we talk about the finance committee meeting later today. But wanting to get the word out more about what the trust has been up to and what it has in the works and plan for the future. And we think that we could use some outside assistance to do that. There are, I think, 1 or 2 folks that have informally expressed interest perhaps in working with the trust. But Mr. Chair, I turn it back to you in terms of what steps we may want to take next here.
Great. So I'm open to suggestions on that, but one thing, Haley, I'd love to, if we could compile for the next agenda so it's in there. I believe that there's a packet prepared for the finance committee that Tucker will be reviewing. Maybe if we pull some other of the visualization documents that have been put together over the last 6 or 12 months into one packet, so it could become, a kind of a discussion point and deliverable to anybody who may be watching or see this and interested in a communications role. So we can share these items on either social media or deliver them to someone so then they can use them as the working document to pull graphics and data from. Because at the moment, I believe the majority of them are on the website and available, but if we can put them into a packet, that might be helpful. Are there, and then and that can kind of become the working document for what we're looking for. Are there other suggestions?
Hey, Sally, it's Penny. I think only that it should be linked to some other resources if it's going to be digital, like Tucker's cell phone. Sorry. Yeah, just that it should be linked to more information, not trying to get everything in one initial packet, because I think it overwhelms people. I also would say when we get to the point, if we do go with a professional public relations firm, that we give serious consideration to local firms to understand the island.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And then I guess from the group, or I don't know if we're in the place to create a subgroup or a subcommittee, but what's the messaging that we're looking for in a proposal that we want to get out there? And I don't know if this meeting's the right place to do that, or another group to come together and deliver it. Brooke?
So to me, the important messages are, what have we accomplished? And how would we use ongoing funding? What are the tools that we're looking to put in our toolbox that we haven't been able to do because we haven't had any funding? And what would we do with that money? Because with the funding articles on the warrant, having a narrative about where that money would be used is going to be critical. to supporting the funding. And also, I am ever surprised at how often people say to me they don't know what we've done with the money we've gotten. And so I think a graphic designer being able to make single image, like really easy, no sentences, just graphics to say this is where the money we've gotten to date has gone or is targeted to go, and why we need an ongoing funding stream.
I'd like to add to that. There's a lot of confusion about who does what in the affordable housing arena. And it's not our job really to necessarily explain that, but if we could in some simplified way contribute towards explaining that, I think it would be prudent.
Thank
Well,
you,
and
Penny.
at the very least, we are virtually the bank for all the other housing programs on Nantucket for development. I mean, that is the easiest. We are the banker for everybody else now. And I think that's an easy way to describe that, you know, this funding stream is going to fund Habitat and Housing Nantucket and will continue as we have been doing for a number of years.
Thank you, Brooke. So I think to move this forward in the most expeditious, efficient way possible, if we can kind of take those two comments, if there's any possibility of finding 2 volunteers for a subcommittee to work with Haley and kind of thinking through those questions, comments, and I guess putting together the, we'll call it a request for proposals for the next meeting. So we have, you know, a real, rather than a discussion, a real working document to come from. Rima?
So,
Hang on, Penny. Rima?
I'm sorry.
Well, we do have an established communications subcommittee that consists of me and Brooke, but you know, if someone else wants to do it, then you know, I certainly can stand aside.
Would you stand in?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, I enjoy working with staff on these things.
Awesome, thank you. Tucker, I'll come to you and then Penny.
Well, I wanted to point out to the group, and Haley or Vicky can comment, but so our updated understanding around open meeting law and subcommittees and so forth is basically, even though 4 is a quorum for our board, if there are 2 of you or more involved, then it has to be posted with an agenda and minutes and so forth. So it's sort of 1, or if you're going to have more than 1, feel free to have as many. Yeah.
It's so hard to get things done and move them forward.
I know.
Okay, Meg?
How does it work with like an email chain?
Same thing. I mean, like Haley and I can individually send you, notes or blind CC the group, and you individually can give us feedback, which we're not sharing, offline with people, but we can't have a conversation happening with more than 2 members or more than 1 member really in email.
Brooke?
This is probably the most important thing we can do in the next few months. And I would say, Haley, if you think you can handle posting another series of meetings, and I mean, I think that the minutes don't have to be super elaborate. It's planning for communication outreach, right? If there is a larger group that wants to work on this together and put heads together, that I say we name a subcommittee and call it official and get it done.
I'm in agreement with you, Brooke. I think the place to start, as Tucker just described, is Haley, if you would send an email to all the members, get feedback, who's available to participate, propose 3 dates, I guess, ask a series of questions about each person's priorities in messaging to communicate. So then when we do arrive at the first meeting, we're working with some feedback out of the gate. In addition to that, if you'd supply some of the documentation that I suggested, so it can, bring the concept of infographics to the table. And then from there, hopefully in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we can have a posted meeting for a group to work on communications. That work for everybody? Meg?
Yeah,
Can I just
Sully,
ask about the March 7th date? Is that gonna be a meeting, or did we not decide to have that meeting? Because if we already have that in the schedule, maybe we could just use that as a communications meeting.
I'm sorry,
we'd have
Meg, I
to
didn't follow
repost
that.
it.
What-
Originally, at some point, I had like 2 meeting dates being held a month, and I have the 7th penciled in right now. And I don't know if we have an agenda for that or need to use that meeting for something else, but maybe since we already have that posted, we could use that as a communications meeting.
Got it, okay. Penny, go ahead.
Yeah, Sully, we'd have to repost that. I was gonna say, I'd be happy to volunteer for this committee as well, but we do need a pretty disciplined deadline, given how fast May is approaching.
Agreed. Okay, so Haley, are we using the 7th at the moment, or was it just a penciled?
It's just penciled in. It's
Okay.
not been posted yet. It will be posted when we have an agenda for it. So it just depends on what you guys want to do.
So let's confirm that date, whether it's the full meeting or just the communications meeting, and then if you'd send the email out so we understand the participation, the questioning, and if we can move some of the concepts along individually in writing, so we're not coming in cold at the discussion.
Sure. I might just want to chat offline with you or Tucker. Just, I need a little bit more understanding of what you want me to prepare for that in terms of the documents that you were talking about.
Understood.
But I'm happy to do that.
Understood. We can work through that.
Sounds good.
Any more? Seeing none, I gotta find my page with the agenda. Okay, so that leads us to a finance committee meeting this afternoon, discussion, and what are these things called? PowerPoint presentation that has some of the communications ideas. So Tucker, to you.
Yeah, so I think you all might have received an email version of it, but I'm gonna do a share screen here. Can everybody see that? Yep. So we're Brian and I and anyone else who can join. Haley has posted a meeting that overlaps with the finance committee's meeting this afternoon for the trust. Are having a discussion with them around the housing funding articles in this year's warrant, and so we'd prepared a few slides that we thought would help guide the conversation, answer, or at least start to answer some of the questions actually that Brooke laid out there with regard to communication. So we're planning on, there is a new member or two on the finance committee. So we included a few things around definitions and background to the extent they want to spend any time, have us spend any time going over that. Then, we get into what funding has been provided since 2019, which is really when the town, started to put resources in any material way toward housing, where that funding has been deployed, the heads and beds figure to date, talk a bit about what's to come, the planned uses for the balance of what we have available for us, where we are with regard to our SHI count and certification / safe harbor, and then going forward, what would be our planned uses for further funding. So, these are all terms we know. Again, these are things that, to the extent it's useful for.
Tucker, can you go back 2 pages real quick? Just to
sure.
slow down,
Yeah.
just since this is a recording, so people can take a second.
Sure. I'm sorry. The key terms page is, really helps explain some of the jargon that, we use fairly, without thinking about, but obviously for the person on the street, this is not everyday language, but SHI is the subsidized housing inventory. That's really the measure of our 10% requirement for the state. DHCD is the Department of Housing and Community Development, which oversees the subsidized housing inventory and also is the determiner of whether a community reaches safe harbor and has its housing production plan certified. The housing production plan, every municipality in the state is required to have one and update it every 5 years. Our most recent plan was approved by the state in October of 2021, therefore runs until 2026. Safe harbor is sort of an interim provision under Chapter 40B, where a town may not yet have reached the 10% state mandate for 10% of its year-round inventory being deemed eligible to be included on the SHI list, but it is showing good faith progress toward that 10% requirement. And so this is a provision that if you reach this level, you are in an ability to say no to a proposed 40B project if you so chose, or have a great deal more say in how that project got shaped. And AMI is average median income for a particular area. In Nantucket, our AMI for a family of 4 is presently $136,100, and you can see the breakdown on the affordability or household income limits by household size. Chapter 40B, again, as we all know, is the Commonwealth's regional planning law. It's been around since the late 60s. It basically says 10% of your year-round housing stock is eligible for inclusion on that subsidized housing inventory. And we talked a moment ago about good faith progress in achieving safe harbor. So getting into funding, again, starting with annual town meeting in 2019, fiscal year 20, that's when material funding for housing began. Folks will recall the Neighborhood First $20 million citizens article was part of that year's support, in addition to the first $5 million CPC bonding. The following year, obviously, was the onset of the pandemic, and so very limited funding was passed at the annual town meeting. The next year saw additional material support in Article 10 and Article 24, principally with several multi-million-dollar bonding authorizations. The CPC gave it $800,000 annual allocation, and then the most recent annual town meeting, further significant bonding to the tune of roughly $25 million was approved there. So all in total, it amounts to $67.625 million. From those funds, those funds, I should say, have been deployed in a variety of ways. Our project at 31 Fairgrounds Road, which will produce 22 year-round restricted units. It's a combination of grants and loans. And with regard to the construction cost, we also used monies from the buckets that we have available to us toward the acquisitions at 135, 137 Orange Street. In addition, the easement at 141, acquisition in conjunction with the land bank, the first of what we hope are many. Vesper Lane property from the UMass Boston institution, Bartlett Road, and we also properties acquired at White. These are vacant land sites at White Street. We funded a couple of habitat projects in total, which will produce 5 units and 2 existing units at Somerset Road and 30 Acres Lane. We put further money to use at Richmond in 2 acceleration and buy down programs. Again, a portion in grants, a portion in loans, where those in total will allow 72 units to move more quickly than they otherwise would have with greater affordability. As we sit here today, there are 36 households that are already, with roofs over their heads in beds. And come the end of June, as we understand it from the developer and project sponsor, there would be another 22 households. Come the end of the next 14 months, there would be another 40 households. And then dependent on the outcome with regard to some projects that we'll talk about on this page, more to follow in the next, 24 to 36 month timeframe. The 6 Fairgrounds Road project. So, looking at the planned uses of the balance of funds, we have in reserve right now $7.5 million. That project is seeking, it already has received significant tax credit award and other state subsidies from the Department of Housing and Community Development. They are seeking additional funding to close the gap that resulted from the delays from the lawsuit, and then sort of emerging from that just as the pandemic was starting and construction costs went through the roof. We are budgeting, if you will, monies toward buy down / financing with regard to the Orange Street and Bartlett Road and Amelia Drive properties, all of which have RFPs which have been approved by the trust, now finalized as far as town council is concerned, and are with the town manager and finance department for final approval and issuance. We are, we have, made an allocation looking at what the current and understood construction cost per unit is at our 31 Fairgrounds Road project, and made assumptions around financing that a proposing developer might be able to get in order to allow those particular projects to go forward. We have done a similar exercise with regard to Vesper Lane. We're in a little bit of a holding pattern, as folks know, with regard to coordination with the hospital for that site and the adjacent one. And we also have an allocation here for the potential buy down of units at the Sparks Avenue location. I think people may be familiar that this is a development that's been a proposed development that's been moving through the planning board process under the major commercial development provision. It does not have a requirement to have any affordable / year-round apartments. It is a rental project. I think our general view on rental projects that have come up at any scale in recent years on the island, we would like to see those serve the year-round community to the greatest degree possible. And so we have incorporated a budget, if you will, toward that being a possibility at that location. The final item is, for development for home ownership opportunity at White Street. So those total up to 21.8 million in plans. There's a couple million that is the differential between what has actually been spent / committed and what is planned here. Call it a little bit of a margin for error. And the, grand total of heads and beds, at the, with all of these things, coming to completion is 236 plus year-round households served. So these funds have, are already having and have the ability to have a fairly significant impact on our housing need here. Looking at, where we are presently with regard to our subsidized housing inventory. I mean, for a long time we were, relatively static, and in recent years, this issue has become front and center for the community. For, significant financial resources have been devoted in recent years, and we now are at a place of having gotten to 6.7% toward the 10% requirement, where we were around 2% just 5 years ago. And we have a steady path forward to get to that 10. We also entered a new period of safe harbor or certification of our housing production plan in early January, which was retroactive to 12/11/2022, and it's a 2-year period which carries us to December of 2024. Going forward, with continued financial support, we intend to, continue to ensure the continuity of safe harbor and reach the 10% requirement. One thing not noted on the prior slide, but our 10% number will change come April, May of this year, following DHCD issuing what our new requirement will be based on 2020 census data. One of the big things that we want to get into, as this group knows, is home ownership opportunities for our year-round community. And this can be achieved through a variety of different programs outlined here. And obviously continue with our successful closing cost assistance program, which has helped 75 families to date. Finance Committee is familiar that there are 4 articles basically on the warrant that deal with housing funding, and we can't achieve the above without meaningful resources.
Thank you, Tucker. I can't see everybody when there's a
I'm going to
screen
unshare, sorry.
Great. Are there any?
Sorry, Brian.
Go ahead, Penny.
Yeah, through you, Brian, to Tucker. How do you anticipate the release of the 2020 census data impacting our 10%? I mean, do you think that a number of year-round units is going up or down from 2010?
So the relatively short answer is that prior to the pandemic, I would have bet $1 it would have gone down. However, the pandemic may be a perfect storm, because the census was conducted in 2020. The pandemic occurred in 2020. Because of the pandemic, the census period was elongated, and so it basically spanned the spring to the fall. And if you think about, where people may have been residing at that point, we potentially had a lot more people residing here than might normally have been during the census period. So as an example, on the US Census, they track something they called occupied homes. that number went up by 1,400 for Nantucket. It isn't necessarily a direct correlation to how DHCD determines the number of year-round homes we have on Nantucket, but that would, potentially is a harbinger that our number is likely going up.
I think we also, just to follow up on that quickly, I think we need to be cognizant of the number of year-round residents who are not participating in the census. I say that only as a statement, not as a question, but I think we've talked about this in the past, and those numbers do not correlate with attendance, for instance, at the public schools.
Tucker, in line with, thank you, Penny. In line with Penny's question about the number of year-round housing units, how would the units that were being built but not yet occupied at Richmond be accounted for in the census? Would they be accounted for as year-round units, or?
No, that's why I said, taking the pandemic out of the equation,
Right.
that those would not have been, some of them would have been, but not the ones that weren't occupied would not have been.
Would not. Yeah, they were. Yeah, there were only a handful done, but there were a lot underway, which, okay. All right, thank you. Any other questions on the presentation for Tucker? Well, my comment is nice work. There's a lot of great content in there. I think it gives us all a lot to think and look about for our feedback to Haley on communications.
I mean, yeah, anyone that has any comments, please share them. That would be helpful for our discussion later. We know that one of the questions that the finance group is going to have is around why did we not go for CPC money this year? And so I think, our explanation is sort of the facts, which are we are in a rhythm with the CPC of going for a major bonding every couple of years. This is an off-cycle year. We still have funding available from, material funding available from the last $5 million bonding done last spring. And the CPC money comes with the restriction, as we all know, with 100% AMI limit. So we think we are in, good position with regard to where we have worked with the CPC and moved them along and have the opportunity to be going back for another significant bonding next year, which can be better informed by some of the programs that we're developing right now. But we also, what we really need is funding that is more flexible and can serve a greater range of need. And the buy down on homes to serve the 80% level is obviously significantly more than some of the other need levels. And there are programs and developments already in place that are producing relatively meaningful numbers with regard to 80% buy down or 80% ownership opportunities. And so we really need something like the $6.5 million override as an example.
Thank you, Tucker. Brooke, then to Mr. Cassidy. Go ahead, Brooke.
Tucker, do you anticipate being asked if and I don't mean this to be obnoxious, but I suspect they're going to ask, which do you prefer, the stabilization fund or the override, right? You, I mean, meaning us, has the trust weighed in? And I think we should be prepared to answer that question.
Well, Libby, and as everybody knows, Libby and Brian came and talked to the trust, and the trust listened and asked questions. The trust didn't take a formal position at this point. I mean, I think they're like, one of the things that I personally don't know the answer to is my understanding is that the funds that a override would produce could be used in effect to bond. I don't know the answer about the stabilization fund in terms of Arthur Reed's article. If that were to move forward in some form, whether those funds could be used to bond with. I think that's a very relevant question for us, I think.
Yeah, yeah, anyway.
Good, Brooke. Let me come to Mr. Cassidy. I think he had his hand went up related to CPC, I think.
It had nothing to do with CPC, Sully. It was just a general comment that I think that as friends of mine will note, I have a tendency to say you're too close to this sometimes. I see Mr. Graziadei on the line here. I hope that he has been listening to this. I think that you guys are sometimes too close to this. The work that has been done and the numbers that Tucker just went through are compelling. And I believe it tells a story that your group, I would wager anybody $1. You guys have done more, at least demographically, to make an impact on this community more than any other community in the Commonwealth. And I think that that is a real story to be told, and thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Billy. I do feel that we are often too close, so I appreciate you pulling the view out for us. And I applaud my fellow board members and staff that works on this. Tucker?
But yeah, I mean, I thank Mr. Cassidy for those remarks. I mean, I did have the opportunity to attend the Housing to Protect Cape Cod work group, a couple of their sessions in recent months. And I mean, Nantucket is held out like as an example, which is, I mean, it's sort of nice, but I guess we feel, it's like we still see how much work there is to do. And so,
We're still working from our back against the wall, but
yeah. I mean, but we, I appreciate Mr. Cassidy's remarks.
Brooke, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I'll just reiterate that when I was at Mass Municipal Association, the same is true, that when I was talking about what we've done on Nantucket, everybody, I mean, I've had a bunch of different communities reach out to me and ask for advice on what to do next, because they see us as a beacon of hope. So yes, our struggle is huge. Our numbers are multiples of the cost to any other community in the Commonwealth in terms of a per unit cost. But what we've done in this community in terms of changing the conversation, the level of participation and buy-in and acceptance from the community that this work needs to be done, is we're so far ahead of so many communities. And I'm proud of our community at large, and especially for everybody who works on affordable housing day in and day out across the different organizations, as how far we've come.
Thank you, Brooke. Okay, I think that brings us to an end of that agenda item on Finance Committee. Does anybody else want to make a comment before I close it? Seeing none, we'll jump to home rule petition for year-round residency discussion for the November 23rd special town meeting. I asked that this item go on to the agenda specifically because my understanding that Julian Sear is moving forth a bill at the State House in an effort to define year-round residency so that then communities will be able to use it to be able to create restrictions that may or may not be affected by affordability, which is on a high level a concept we've talked about here before. The reasoning for wanting to put together a home rule petition for the November meeting is to show our support at the State House at this level. Hopefully, Senator Sear's efforts make it their way without us having to make it to November. That may or may not be affected by affordability, which is on a high level of concept we've talked about here before. The reasoning for wanting to put together a home rule petition for the November meeting is to show our support at the State House. Haley, are you still there? Can you mute Vicky for us? Senator Sears' efforts make it their way without us having to make it to November. Can we mute Vicky?
Yeah,
Thank you, Vicky. Okay, so so that was my reason for putting this up here. I do understand that there are other communities that are currently filing home rule petitions. If I'm correct, I think Provincetown, and I'm going to check in with Brooke because she recently attended something to give us a little more outlook on this. Brooke?
Yes, so the purpose of this, it is not clear in Massachusetts law that a deed restriction that doesn't have an affordability component attached to it can be in perpetuity with a year-round. The concept of a year-round restriction without an affordability restriction attached to it doesn't exist in the law at the moment. And so communities who want to have this available to have a market that is the only restriction is year-round occupancy, as opposed to affordability attached to it as well. And so it allows a deed restriction in perpetuity with just a year-round restriction. It defines that in the law, and that's the purpose. And so Julian's bill is intended to set this into Massachusetts code. And you're right that all of the home rules are basically meant to be in support of that legislation, to show support in the same way that all of our home rules on the housing bank, well, we started with the home rule and then they went to the statewide. It's the same kind of thing. Like the number of communities that do home rules as well is a signal to the legislature that this is important. So
Brooke, if I understand this correctly, I believe that some of the other communities are still working on their home rule petitions, but as soon as one's available, we can bring it to this group and then hopefully pass it to the select board to support for potential warrant for the November town meeting. If I understand that as the correct path.
yes, and the communities that are doing this on the Cape, and Tucker and I have been talking to a select board member from Provincetown. Their warrant was not finalized yet, so they're going to get it on their Springtown meeting. And once their language is final, we'll get that from Provincetown. And they're trying to get it as coordinated as possible across communities so that it's an easier message to the State House what we all want.
Before I come to Vicky, and this may be a question for Vicky, but maybe you have it, Brooke. Is Julian's Sears bill, is it printed in a way that we can circulate it to Haley and she can deliver it to this group so we can read kind of how they're defining residency?
Yeah, it's a little ugly because they did it sort of so they have a deadline for filing bills, and they kind of scrambled something together that has some things that it defines year round as 11 months or and a day or something like that. And so in some of the conversations I've been having is there should be a range so communities can pick. So it's preliminary language, it's draft language, and the understanding is that it will be amended through the process and crafted based on some feedback from communities. But yeah, Tucker, do you remember the bill number? It's SB.
I don't know the bill number right offhand, but yeah, I mean, this came about like 5 days before it had to be filed, sort of a thing. And
Yep.
so Vicky, let's go to Vicky because she actually helped put things together for Provincetown and Julian. Yeah,
Vicky, the floor is yours. Vicky, whenever you can unmute. Haley, maybe you can unmute Vicky. I know that she was having trouble with her
I
camera.
asked her to unmute, but I
help
can't
put
do
things
it for
together
her.
for Provincetown and Julian. Yeah.
Vicky, the floor is yours.
okay. So I was asked to actually draft the legislation
Vicky,
for
whenever
this.
you can unmute.
I'm unmuted. Can you hear me now? Okay.
Haley, maybe you can unmute Vicky. I know that she was having trouble with her
I
camera.
asked her to unmute, but I can't do it for her.
It's unmuted.
Yeah,
I'm
we
not
can hear you,
muted.
Vicky, but it's echoing.
I'm unmuted. Hear me? Okay. So I was asked to draft.
We can hear you, Vicky, but it's echoing.
Yeah, I know. And I have had a terrible time with you guys all after listening to you, quite frankly. I don't know what else to do. Just keep going. Okay. All right. So I was asked to draft this legislation, and I've been involved with the town of Provincetown. My office actually represents the town of Provincetown. And so they have come to us to participate in drafting this legislation, which I did. It was their board actually that was pushing the time frame on this. So the bill that is before the legislature, the way it's drafted, is to actually amend several sections of Chapter 184. It's to amend sections 26, 31, and 32. And so by doing that, it allows for the year-round housing occupancy restriction to be defined in sections 31. And it would be defined with how restrictions are defined for affordable housing restrictions and conservation restrictions, things like that, that are perpetual restrictions that have an effect on property. And so I drafted it basically with the idea that we were modifying the language for those sections so that it would create a definition for a year-round housing occupancy restriction. That was the purpose of that legislation. The input of 11 months came from, various conversations amongst the parties. And so the legislation was filed because there was a time frame in which it had to be done, but with the idea that it would go through committee and most likely be modified as it goes along, and there are hearings on it. So that's how the legislation came about. And it's going to work its way through the committees, is what I was told. Subsequently, I've been asked by the town of Provincetown to draft their home rule petition. And I've done that. I am actually going to have a conversation with them tomorrow with one of the select board members, as well as their assistant town manager, to discuss the proposed home rule petition, which I've drafted. And their draft was originally, their direction was originally to have the select board acquire these year-round restrictions. But I raised the question with them whether they wanted to use their affordable housing trust as a vehicle to acquire those restrictions. And they have more than one affordable housing trust. Okay, so it's a little different than Nantucket. So we're going to have a discussion about that tomorrow. But basically, the way the home rule petition is written is it would allow them to acquire a year-round housing restriction as as it has been defined. And then it also outlines things like requirements for the restrictions, such as the form of it, recording of it, enforceability rights for the town, things like that. So it's really just a matter of just simply allowing them to acquire it, and then how they would enforce it, how they would create it. And that's what the home rule petition as it stands right now, the proposed draft, what that looks like. And that's subject to change.
I've unmuted, so I'm expecting the loop to start again, Vicky. Can you mute and thank you for the summary? Brooke, I'll come over to you.
Through you to Vicky real quickly before she mutes. So just to clarify, if this is passed, but if the legislation is passed at the State House, we still need to do a home rule petition for us to take advantage of it on Nantucket. Is that correct, Vicky?
I've unmuted, so I'm expecting the loop to start again, Vicky.
Okay, I can hear you now.
For the summary.
Okay.
Brooke, I'll come over to you.
Through you to Vicky real quickly before she mutes. So just to clarify, if this is passed, but if the legislation is passed at the State House, we still need to do a home rule petition for us to take advantage of it on Nantucket. Is that correct, Vicky?
That is correct. I mean, basically, all the legislation does is to actually create the year-round occupancy restriction. Then you have to find a way, who's going to acquire it? Is it going to be, say, the Affordable Housing Trust or a select board, or, what entity, what board is going to actually acquire it? So in Nantucket, most likely it makes sense for the trust to acquire it. And so you would need to have a home rule petition, or you would need to have some kind of creation that would allow you to acquire it. Yes. You would definitely need to go to town meeting to get this started, to be able to acquire it.
Thank you, Vicky. Penny?
Yeah, Brian, through you to Vicky before she mutes also, would the local definition process take place with the home rule petition?
We need to wait a minute for the loop to catch her.
Okay.
Vicky, I'm not sure, did you hear that from Penny? Penny, I'm not sure if we can get the answer with her technical issue. It sounds like
Okay,
she's got.
that's fine. I'm sure there'll be more opportunities to talk about this.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think this will need to, it'll be interesting to follow up after she has her meeting with Provincetown tomorrow. And then if we can move this forward in time to get it on a November town meeting agenda item.
Thanks.
Thanks, Penny. Any more discussion on this item? Seeing none, I will look for my agenda. We'll close that. Item 11, down payment assistance program discussion. I'm not sure if this is a live item for today or a carryover from a previous meeting. I think this may have been a carryover. Does anybody? Tucker,
Well,
Brooke? Okay, go ahead.
yeah, so I think the board, I mean, this is something that we want to have a discussion about. We may have, it may be limited today. Did the board receive the mass housing program? So that is was intended, that's a program recently run by Mass Housing that was intended to be a bit of a Kickstarter to having discussions around this. I know that Brooke has had her eye on some upcoming opportunities with regard to restricted home ownership units. And so maybe I'll kick it over to her.
Thank you, Tucker. Brooke?
Yeah. So we were contacted by Beth Ann Meehan, who walked us through some numbers in terms of the units that have now been lotteried and are headed toward closing at which are actually being sold by the Nantucket. It's a different ownership. It's the lots that Richmond sold off to another developer, and there's a bunch of affordable units at 175 and 80% AMI. That those lotteries have been complete, and those closings are approaching. And Beth Ann had walked Tucker and me through anonymously some of the financing challenges for the families that had applications into her for mortgages for those homes, and that they basically, with interest rates increasing, the window for them being able to actually afford to close on those houses, even if they won the lottery, was really limited. And she was encouraging us to try to fast track a down payment assistance program in order to have something available for those families. I don't know what the timing is. I have not gotten an update on what the timing of those closings are, or whether we can even do that. When we first talked about this, the question was, do we have a funding source currently? Do we have any assets that we own, cash assets that we have access to, that we could fund such a pilot program for those homes? And I know Tucker was going over the finances with Brian. Brian Turbot, I don't know whether that question has been answered. It may be moot if we don't have any available resources that could be utilized for that purpose. We can't use borrowing for this. It would likely have had to come out of the balance of the $2 million housing department funding from last year's town meeting or the prior year's town meeting. So that would be question one. And then if we did have some money to pilot this, could we put something together, and in what timeline could we put something together would be the question.
Thank you, Brooke. So Tucker, I'll come back to you on the funding aspect and see where that leads us.
Yeah, I mean, our understanding is, we do have some funding available. We would have funding available to us now that, with the income restriction that could be, utilized for this purpose.
And that's at those are for the 80s or the 150s? Or both?
I mean, we would have funding at both levels. Yeah.
Okay, great. And then, so then the mechanics of the program and putting that together, to your point, Brooke, in a timeline that could meet these closing schedules. Again, we need to get an update on what those look like. At the time that you had this conversation, had that lottery declared, I don't want to call it winners, the selectees? You're on mute, Brooke.
Yeah, so my understanding is the lottery happened, and then the process is that then they are qualified finally financially as to whether they could put together the down payment and actually qualify to close. So I would be happy to make some calls this week, and maybe in addition to communications, we could have this on the March 7th agenda. And I will do my level best to try to get some. One of the other challenges here is there will be legal documents required, and Vicky is really overworked. And so I'm just not sure the timeline's going to work for this, but I don't want to drop this ball. If we don't get it for this set of closings, I think we need to keep this on the front burner and make it happen so the next round of affordable units that come to closing at these higher interest rate numbers have some more support beyond the closing cost assistance for these home buyers.
Thank you, Brooke. Tucker.
Just quickly, Haley, Chantal got dropped and she's in the waiting room.
Now, Brooke, I had a thought at one point related to this, and I don't know how it falls, but if there is an individual who needs the down payment assistance, and where does the developer's role come in making and adjusting their selling price to help accommodate that scenario versus going to the next person on the list?
So what the numbers that Beth Ann reflected to ours is that virtually everybody on the list is at risk of not being able to close. So we may all recall what happened when the first tranche of 175% units came out at Richmond. They were unable to qualify buyers for them. And so they did end up doing some interesting and different deals on those. So I think your question is a good one, Brian. It could be that they won't be able to actually sell these. And what happens then? It's an interesting question.
Right.
So are we subsidizing the developer to be able to sell in an interest rate environment where the price point is not achievable by the people whose income is capped at the various income levels?
Right, within the
it's-
free market of the restriction. Now, if I also understand correctly, at the time that the lottery was done, since then, the pricing has been adjusted, right? Because the lottery was filed in September or October, and then the pricing was, DHCD's requirements were adjusted in January.
You're talking about Covenant Homes?
No, it would
Are you
be any AMI level pricing. Doesn't it all recalculate at the beginning of the
Yeah,
new
you
year?
know, that it's a good question. I need to do some research.
Okay.
All good question.
Yeah, it's
So-
like, there's so many layers to this conversation. It's, challenging to keep track of them all.
Mhm.
Rima has a question.
Yeah, I was wondering how many units, how many applicants, units this would affect that Beth Ann had shown you, and how much money do we have, and what kind of how much down payment assistance would we be looking at for each person? How many people could we cover, and sort of if we did try to get this together quickly.
So we talked roughly, we sort of hashed it out verbally, Tucker, Beth Ann and I, and one of the ideas we came up with was a dollar for dollar, up to $40,000 of our fund. So in other words, the home buyer would have to have a dollar for every dollar. We would match dollar for dollar their own down payment, so that they would have financial commitment in the process of their own assets. And then a cap of 40,000. And I think it's like 7 or 8 units overall. So I think we were talking like what is the math on that? Around, like $250,000 or something like that to make available for that round of homes. And then we also talked about whether to impute a small interest rate with a balloon payment on sale, rather than at 0% like the closing costs. So those were kind of the rough framework of what we had been, just sort of talked out, the three of us, in a conversation when we started talking about this, trying to bring something a little more concrete to this group, rather than just spitballing all possibilities all over the place.
Thank you, Brooke. Any more questions for Brooke? So it sounds like we'll carry this item to the next meeting with a little bit more of an update on closings, need, award, selectees, and then kind of any pricing adjustment that may or may not happen on those units. Great. Item 12, other business. Is there any new other business that wasn't previously known about?
Brian,
Oh, yes, Penny.
sorry. I don't even know if this is the right place to mention this, but the Academy Hill apartments, some of those are supposed to be restricted to affordable. And I don't know how to put this. I know people who are property owners who are renting those as like to have an in-town pied-a-terre. I don't think that's right.
I would agree with that sentiment. I don't know what is that something to deliver to Hall Keen. Vicky, you made a motion. I'll go to you.
Good.
Sorry, Vicky, you're on the spot now.
Had a horrible day with this today. So I'm back. So Academy Hill is an affordable project. It's also got a senior component to it. So if anybody is not complying, I mean, Hal Keen is the manager of this project. And so these are questions that we would have to direct to them to see, in fact, if they're aware of what's going on there. And I mean, they certainly should be. And they also, you know, are the proponent for Six Fairgrounds as well. So, you know, I mean, we do have communication with them.
I'll follow up with them. Thank you.
Yeah.
So,
If-
Penny, before you follow up individually, I don't know whether this should be an action of this board or the select board. Tucker?
Well, I was just going to say, I will coordinate with Penny to get more of the details, but we need to be in touch with them anyway about a larger conversation with regard to Six Fairgrounds. And so I might suggest that we include this in this more formal communication with respect to that other item.
Perfect.
Great.
Thank you.
Penny, thanks for bringing that to our attention. Vicky?
Okay, bye.
No, I missed the discussion or the end of the discussion about the year-round occupancy restriction. So I just don't know if there was anything else that you needed me to address.
So I think we closed with the last question coming from Penny to you, Vicky, was if it passes at the state, we understand that we need our own home rule petition, but is it in our own home rule petition that we would define what our considerations were on regulations related to occupancy, meaning definitions and timing? I think that was the last.
So, I mean, it's a really good question because it depends. I think what's going to depend is what happens to the legislation first, because that's going to define it for the state, similar to what it defines affordable housing to be. Okay, what is an affordable housing restriction is defined in the statute. So I think we sort of have to wait and see how that shakes out a little bit. But there's nothing that says that we cannot go ahead and proceed with our own, and which is what Provincetown is doing. And quite frankly, they're following right now the definition as it is in the proposed legislation.
And so we continue to stay, Brooke, I'll come to you 1 second. We continue to go on just as you dropped off that this is something we believe we want to be moving forward to the November, getting on the November warrant for the special town meeting. So we'll want to follow up with you after your meetings with them.
And I could prepare something for your review as well, so that you can start thinking about it and how you want to, you know, if there are any changes. I mean, we don't have to follow exactly what Provincetown would do, certainly.
Right. But it's a baseline to begin our conversation.
It gets us started, definitely.
Thank you, Vicky. I'll come to Brooke because she has a follow-up question. Brooke?
However, Vicky, if the current definition of 11 months stays in the legislation, then we cannot do anything less restrictive than 11 months in our own, correct? In order for it to comport with the bylaw?
Well, I would probably similar to what, so I think that you could, okay? And the reason I say this is, think about, for instance, CPA, okay, community preservation. It's defined in the statute one way, but Nantucket is proposing it to have a different limit for this town, okay? Similarly, we could do the same thing for the restriction for a year-round housing restriction. We would need to obviously create, you know, a home rule petition to do that. That would be applicable to Nantucket. And then, but a year-round housing restriction, it would still be a lawful restriction that could be perpetual. And that's really what is being created there, is a restriction that's in perpetuity and not just for 30 years, which is really what the restrictions unlimited time are for. So I think
That's
we should
great.
be creative, okay, and do something.
Okay, awesome. So we'll keep that rolling on to the next meeting and kind of moving that along. Thank you. Any other business? Fill that one. Seeing none, I'll close other business and go to board comments. Seeing no board comments, I'll look for a motion to move to executive session for the purpose to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property where an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of a public body. Is there a
So
motion?
moved.
Motion from
Second.
Rima, second from Penny, by roll call, Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Meg Bowers,
Aye.
Rima Sherry,
Aye.
Penny Dye.
But Sally, excuse me, I'm going to be a little late hopping on to executive session, but I'll
Okay,
be there.
great.
Okay. Yeah.
I think same with Tucker and Shanta Murphy
Aye.
and Brian Sullivan tonight. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you in the other room.
Okay. Thanks. Bye.